everybody. This is Elisa Chiu. I am the founder and CEO of Anchor Taiwan, a platform focusing on ecosystem building and venture capital for cross-border innovation. It is with tremendous pleasure and honor to gather so many of you from around the world to talk about the future of mobility. This is a topic that has always interested us. One inspiration for this particular session is the newly defined intersection between brands and manufacturers, startups, and corporates. During a keynote session a few months ago, Geeta Fisker, co-founder and CFO of Fisker, talked about their asset-light business model. She said, quote, "We don't want to build our factories. We want to partner with the best of the best, like Magna International, like Foxconn. They know supply chains, they know volumes, they know processes," unquote. This truly shows the new paradigm shift in the auto industry. Can supply chain be more than supply chain? That's the question I would like us to ponder. While the biggest manufacturer in the world, Foxconn, is expanding from phones into cars with their MIH open platform, we're also seeing more players from the supply chain entering the game through corporate venturing and corporate innovation. For example, last year, EV startup Canaan went public. Did you notice that among their SPAC investors, there were TPK and Yageo from Taiwan? You might or might not have heard of them, but increasingly, players from around the world in the supply chain can be your strategic partners and investors. Of course, if you know where to find such opportunities. I am extremely grateful to bring the speakers and interviewer together for the session today. They come from two segments at the center stage of what I mentioned earlier. One from the East, one from the West. One from a tech manufacturing giant, one from the EV startup world. However, there's probably no easy way to define them black and white, as they are both so international and dynamic. As usual, our interviewer is an industry veteran himself. Through the preparation of this session, I truly witnessed how a world-class leader and innovator work together. For us at Anchor Taiwan, we don't host events for the sake of hosting events. We host and curate events because we believe that an event is the beginning of a conversation, an inspiration, or a connection leading into so much more actionable collaborations. I hope you will walk away with at least one new contact or idea from today's session for many more beautiful things to come. This series would not have been possible without our co-host and important partner, DIGITIMES. Before we start, I would like to invite Eric Huang, Vice President at DIGITIMES, to share a few insights on today's topic. Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Elisa. Greetings, everyone. Elisa, Vitaly, Monika, and Jack. Glad to have all of you join the webinar. I'm Eric Huang, the Vice President of DIGITIMES. I'm responsible for DIGITIMES Asia and lead our research team to provide supply chain insight with an angle from Asia. Before the panel, I would like to share two interesting figures. This month, the EU proposed an effective ban on the sale of new fossil fuel cars from 2035. You may know year 2020 was the first year that Europe surpassed China as the biggest EV market in the world, with a sales volume of 1,365,000 versus China's 1,246,000. If this policy becomes law, it will accelerate the adoption of EVs. We all know that the government policy is the biggest driving force for the EV market growth. Based on our forecast, by year 2025, EVs will take over 20% market share of the global automotive market. And the compound growth rate from 2020 to 2025 will exceed 40%. In this figure, you can see with the booming of the EV market, dozens of EV startups try aggressively to commercialize their design and penetrate the market. They are in different geographical regions and in different market segments, and have raised nearly $20 billion from investors. The status of these EV newcomers varies. Some successfully gain the footing and begin to challenge the established giants. For example, China's Li Auto, Xiaopeng, and NIO all shipped around 8,000 EVs in July. Some startups have successfully secured funding and are ready to enter the market, like our panelists, Monika's company, QEV Technologies. Some failed, like Nicola, and some are facing challenges, like Lucy, which just restructured the management team and reshaped their business strategy this year. There's another paradigm shift of the automotive industry from product development point of view. The car is under transition from software-hardware integration system to software-hardware separation and software-defined, and from proprietary system to open platform. We can see the emerging trend of the adoption of automotive OS and EV skateboard platform. The figure shows the EV platforms developed by automakers, tier ones, and startups. With the advantage of economical scale and economic scope, automakers can speed up the EV design cycle for different segments and models. Many strategic partnerships formed within the ecosystem. For example, Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi Alliance co-developed the CNF EV platform, and Ford adopt Volkswagen's NEV platform. While automakers' platform mainly dedicated to their own camp, Tier 1's EV platform will have a stronger spillover effect for EV newcomers to enter the market with less capital investment, such as Bosch and Magna have their own EV platforms. Just like many EV newcomers whose management team and shareholders come from tech industry, we can see some EV platforms are developed by technology firms, such as MIH platform, which is backed by Foxconn, the world's largest tech EMS supplier. Glad to have Jack Cheng, the CEO of MIH Alliance, to join the panel today. In conclusion, technology is disrupting the automotive industry. It's not just the technology itself, but also the newcomer from tech industry to enter the market with creative thinking and fast speed. No one can tell who will win the EV battle, but the one thing is for sure, the automotive ecosystem will be significantly transformed in the coming years. Now it's over to you, Elisa.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm seeing a lot of great messages and greetings in the chat. Keep them coming and feel free to also paste your LinkedIn URL. Remember your goal, at least one new contact or idea before the end of today's session. And if you were in our last Asia Venturing session, which by the way is available through recording, you know that our interviewers and moderators are all industry experts and keynote speakers themselves. I first met our interviewer today, Vitaly Golomb, in 2017 in San Francisco. He was already a serial entrepreneur, an author, a founding partner at HP Tech Ventures, among other things. He is currently leading M&A and IPO transactions as a partner at Drake Start Partners, focusing on mobility and energy transition. His clients include Rimac, Fisker, Hyperloop, and many others. Vitaly, so great to have you here with us, and so happy to end up working with you after so many years. How are you today, and where are you dialing in from?
Thanks, Elisa. I really appreciate it. I'm dialing in from Los Angeles. I'm usually in San Francisco Bay Area, but in LA this week.
Fantastic. So stage is yours. I'm going to let you introduce our speakers. Have fun.
Thank you very much for the invitation to host this great event. I've been a big fan of Taiwan for a very long time. In fact, so much so that both my kids are half Taiwanese. I'm an investment banker with over 20 years of experience on all sides of the table. Throughout my career, I've been involved in dozens of financing, joint ventures, and M&A transactions across North America, Europe, and Asia. And today I lead the global mobility and energy transition practice at Drake Start Partners. We are a multiple award-winning global tech investment bank, which is in its relatively short history has completed over 400 transactions, 70% of which are cross-border. Our team of 120 plus bankers is spread across 10 offices in US, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. And I got to know our first panelist by helping Rimac Automobili raise its first major round of funding. Coincidentally, it was led by the largest battery manufacturer in China, well before Porsche and later Hyundai got invested in the company as well. So Monika Mikac is a member of the founding team at Rimac Automobili, the maker of the all-electric and fastest production car in the world, in the Vera. Recently, it was announced that Rimac will take control of the 112-year-old French hypercar brand Bugatti. There, as the chief operating officer, she helped grow the company from 8 crazy kids in a Croatian garage to hundreds of employees and a very respected place in the global automotive industry. Today, Monika is the chief business officer of QEV Technologies, one of the companies that helped launch Formula E electric racing, develop many vehicles for major OEMs, and is electrifying bus transportation across developing countries. We also have Jack Cheng. He's a pioneer in the automotive industry. For many, especially on this call, he doesn't need an introduction, but I'll do one anyway. He spent over 19 years at Ford, where he became vice president of its China operations, and then served as the chairman and CEO of Magneti Marelli Asia Pacific, and then chairman of Fiat and Fiat Finance China. He left to co-found NIO and then XPT, the provider of advanced technology components and the solutions which are the brain, heart, and soul of NIO vehicles. In September of 2018, NIO began trading on the New York Stock Exchange. Today, it has a market cap of $74 billion. In January of this year, Foxconn was able to convince Jack to come back to Taiwan to head up its MIH Alliance, an open EV ecosystem that promotes collaboration in the mobility industry. So with that, welcome Monika and Jack, and we'll jump right in. I'd like to ask you both, how did you get started in the automotive industry? Maybe Monika first.
So my journey in the automotive industry started back in 2010 when I met Rimac, and he was just a crazy kid, you know, who wanted to develop the world's fastest electric supercar. I worked before as a journalist, actually, and didn't know anything about the automotive industry. But I really liked his idea and I liked his spirit, so I decided to join the team. And basically all of us were, you know, jumping without the parachute and trying to build it on our way. And company, of course, had ups and downs, but at the end it developed in the big automotive player. At the moment when I realized, you know, okay, Porsche came in, company is just going to get bigger. It was time for me for new challenges. And that's when I joined QEV to become a chief business officer. So now it's been more than 10 years in the automotive industry for me.
And Jack, I gave a quick intro, but you have a tremendous history. How did you get interested in the industry in the first place?
Thank you, Vitaly. Hi, good morning and good evening, everybody around the world. I have an honor to be here with you guys. Firstly, I would like to introduce myself. I was a veteran of the automotive since 1980s. So we have a lot to do with also a passion for the mobility world. So since 1980s, I was with Ford, and then after several decades, I've been retired from Ford, and I joined Fiat Chrysler under the introduction of Sergio Marchionne, who is the FCA's chairman before. I have a pleasure to work with a lot of people around the world. So I still have my mobility passion to go forward. So in just 5-6 years ago, I founded the NIO together with my partner. We had a lot to talk about in the EV world. So that's, I think, the purpose of today. And also, I was lucky enough last year I get invited by Foxconn to be back in Taiwan to be my hometown. So I really have that kind of a sensation and also passion to move this new mobility world together with you guys. So it's nice to be here with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. So why don't we pick it up where you just left it off? What attracted you and inspired you to come back to Taiwan to step into the CEO role of the MIH Alliance?
Well, firstly, Vitaly, it's all about coming back home, where you see Taiwan is a beautiful island. As you know, you have 2 kids also from Taiwan. We love this island, and we want to put our passion into it, particularly in the new generation. How do we inspire the new generation to be more mobility oriented? There's a lot of people now under this new situation of the worldwide pandemic, then they need to mobilize themselves. And I do believe with our EV concept and also our open platform concept, we can get a lot of talent to be able to jump into it and develop together with us to create a better world for our next generation. So that's all about coming back home.
Not a bad thing to do. Monika, you're now Chief Business Officer at QEV. It's not a title that every company has. What does a Chief Business Officer do on a daily basis? And considering your business is very global, how do you find a common language with all of your global customers and partners?
So in every startup, I would say that even if you hold a certain role, you need to wear many different hats. So of course, in QEV Technologies, we are 130 people. For the automotive industry, that's really a startup. And I need to do whatever is necessary for the company to succeed. But as a Chief Business Officer, my main role is to coordinate with existing shareholders, to do all of the fundraising and all of the relationship with investors, and also to do all of the business development for the company. And as you mentioned, I frequently work on different continents, from our clients and partners in Asia to our clients and partners in America. So I had to learn, beside, working late hours or early morning hours or in the middle of the night like I'm doing right now, I had to also balance different cultures, learn a lot of different customs, adapt to that. And I always like to say that you actually work with people, not with companies. So that's my key mission, to think in my head and always trying to balance and learn how to work with the different cultures. And definitely it would help out if I know Chinese. I think that would make me a billionaire probably, but I didn't start to learn it at the proper age, so it's really hard for me.
Very good. I'll let you borrow my daughter. She's fluent and she can be a translator. And I know you're going to teach your daughter probably Mandarin as well.
Definitely.
So the automotive industry went through a couple of shocks in the last year and a half or so. First, the pandemic shut down the automotive industry completely. And now we're getting some side effects of that, and we experience disrupted supply chains, delays in various important components. What will it take for us to get back on track and recover as an industry? Jack, maybe you first.
Sure. I think that the whole pandemic hit is really happening for the last almost 2 years now. We are experiencing a lot of issue, particularly we are all locked down at home. So there's not too much of a mobility activity that you can do. So I would believe that to recover from a new angle, if we are moving the so-called lockdown environment into the car, isn't it the better approach that people can be actually counting the quarantine time as part of their 14 days or 21 days? When they are tired of being locked down for 7 days, they can go into their car and then give it a drive. It's still being counted as a part of your quarantine period. Isn't that wonderful? So I believe there's a lot of things that we can do after the pandemic to make the mobility world more livable or even more agile for people who are interested in doing this, particularly in the digital health period. You go into the car, you get your heartbeat, your pressure, and everything from the sensor, and then you make that environment as part of your digital health environment. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do, and then we can recover from that angle. What about that, you think, Monika?
I completely agree with you. And I also think that we are not going to recover in a sense that we are going to come back to the same as it was before. So definitely we are going to experience a lot of different changes, and we all have to adapt for what is waiting for us. Because most of the time we were expecting, this is going to pass in a couple of months, this is going to pass, but it will last much longer than we are expecting, and we need to learn how to live with the new situation, how to work online, how to have conferences online, and as you said, maybe even having conferences in the future in our vehicles, in our cars. So reshaping totally.
Now, one possible positive effect of the pandemic related manufacturing shutdowns has been a big jump in EV market share, because as all the supply chains are coming back, they're certainly not going to be building for the past. And electric vehicles are very much obvious and no brainer now. Now, are we finally at the tipping point of electric vehicles? How do we get beyond just the 5% of sales? That seems like a big jump up to this point, but we have a long ways to go. What needs to happen?
Well, let me go first. If this is early stage of the EV scale up, mainly because it's driven by the regulation and also incentive at the moment. There's a new announcement that from US side also to get the EV going. But I firmly believe once you have the EV experience, you're not going back to the combustion engine. It's a different world, because not only from the environmental point of view, but also from the user experience point of view, there's a lot of things that you can really touch and feel. And then EV, if it become a smart EV, a smart mobility, then it's a totally different world. So I think that the experience that can get all the customer is a one-way street. They never come back to the combustion. So that's something that I think, if you ask me whether there's a hockey stick point, that I wouldn't say an exact year, but at least 3-4 years time, when the combustion engines, the fuel consumption, and also the operating cost is really more than the EV, then there will be a tipping point there.
I also
Monika,
think it's actually, I think it's really a perfect moment for the shift to happen, because people were not spending too much, people were not moving, and people really want to buy new cars, move forward. And it's a right moment to give it a push for electric vehicles. Considering Croatia, where I'm coming from, it's a small country, and the car sales dropped heavily in 2020. Basically, nobody was selling cars because nobody was moving anywhere and nobody thought about buying car. And now in 2021 beginning, government gave 14 million euros of subsidies for electric cars. In 2 days, people applied and got, all of the subsidies that were possible to buy cars. So in basically 2 days, you had higher car sales and electric car sales than you had it in the 2020. So I think that this is really a moment where all of the players in the EV industry should use it and should push people to buy electric cars, because people want to try new cars, people want to go to some events, people want to have different experiences, and people want to spend money that was waiting on the side, and they couldn't go anywhere and couldn't spend.
Now, there have been two factors that have driven statistically EV adoption more than anything to this point. One is government regulations, the other is government incentives. What programs have you seen that have been effective, and what would you like to see more of? And how much of an impact will the US infrastructure bill make, do you think, in the US?
Well, 5 years ago, when we just started from China, there were just a start with the incentive, and also the regulation is now moving toward supporting the EV, but it's on a gradual basis. But for now, if you just see what Joe Biden's announcement on the incentivizing all the EV industry to go forward with $174 billion of a bill. That's something huge, because now the big conglomerates are competing from China and US, now in Europe. Everybody is trying to do something differently. So I believe that from that sense that we have a chance to move forward, because there's a lot of things that all the regulation do is just sparkling all this, and later on the consumer was gonna do something about, with all this incentive, they will be moving to user experience, user interface, and also gaining that experience and creating the pie bigger. And once that pie is bigger, when I was in the automotive industry, we always say product is something that drives the whole requirement. So I believe that there's a lot of things that we can do to make sure that the increase of the EV and then spread into the whole bunch of a smart mobility world.
For me, the perfect example how to do it is actually Norway. If you look at Norway in 2020, EV sales of light vehicles was 54%, while in US that number was only 2%. So there is a huge difference for the US to catch up with all of the efforts that, for example, Norway was doing. And in Norway, at the moment, you could say that EVs are already mainstream. And I think they've really combined well all of the regulations, having in mind that until 2025, they want all of the cars that are going to be sold to be either electric or hydrogen. And also all of the incentives they have. So basically their tax system allows you, if you're going to buy some really, some basic Ferrari, it would probably be so expensive that even if you're buying electric hypercar, that would be cheaper for you than buying some regular Ferrari. And also this tax system makes it really easy calculation for you. The e-Golf, it's going to be cheaper than the regular Golf for you. So I think those are the things that all of the governments should look, basically do the copy paste of what Norway is doing and push people for it.
Yeah, it's really about bringing that cost of battery to under $100 per kilowatt hour and getting the cost of the EVs below the cost of the internal combustion vehicles, and then of course the government doing their part with incentives to push the scales of the economic scales a little bit before that. Now, Monika, QEV has chosen to focus its efforts in large part on electric buses. Talk about the market in developing and developed countries and the impact electric public transportation will make.
So for us, all of the technology that we were developing in the racing segment and in R&D for other clients, we wanted to use it for something that has much more impact. And the impact that we saw is in a public transportation. And we definitely noticed that in emerging markets, nobody's really paying attention what is happening, and a lot of pollution is actually happening over there. So we started the project in Philippines in 2017 because there are 300,000 of jeepneys, small minibuses driving in Philippines that are polluting heavily. For most of the people, this is the main way of transportation in Philippines. And government didn't have a solution what to do and how to transfer all of those buses to electric. And if they would buy completely new buses, it would be really expensive. And also all of the jeepney manufacturers in Philippines, they would shut down. So that was not definitely a solution. And here is where we came in. And we offered a solution of electric kit that can be used for conversion of those jeepneys. At the end, project developed a bit further, and we actually developed the full platform for those minibuses. And even, offering to our clients if they wanted the full bus to be produced and delivered to them. At the end, that was a showcase of a business model that could be actually copied in many other countries. So we started something similar in Peru, where we also delivered platforms, and then the local bus manufacturer is building body and interiors on top and selling those buses that are being produced locally. Although the tech part and the platform part is coming from QEV. And we even noticed that although we didn't consider at the beginning, for example, Europe as our market, but at the end we noticed there is really a need for similar product from European companies or some Western companies. For example, we are discussing some of the projects for conversion of school buses in US. So there is really a huge need for those kind of solutions that were not existing on the market. And this is where we want to push. So not offering the full bus, but also keeping, companies that are producing buses and offering them the technology where they can build. And I think this is something similar what MIH is doing with a platform for cars. And basically, maybe there could be opportunities to work in the future for the bus platforms.
It's a very good segue. Thanks, Monika. So Jack, the MIH Alliance plans to become the Android of EVs, as you said before, and use Foxconn's manufacturing capabilities to help established and vehicle startups electrify. Can you talk a little bit about the economic model and the supply chain efficiencies behind that will make this a better option than doing manufacturing in-house, much like Foxconn has done with electronics at large?
Okay, thank you, Vitaly, and thank you, Monika, for mentioning MIH to give me a good start. MIH itself stands for Mobility in Harmony. And a lot of people say, well, you can make it happen. Yeah, Foxconn is the company backing up big time that we're doing an open platform, meaning that you have a platform of MIH that is also offering to the developer to do something like Android on the system of the phone, and you actually do it on the EV. You can really also look at the Costco model, the marketing of doing a lot of things, and you put it on a platform, and people can put their services and developing into something like, a platform that you can offer to all different user experience. Particular in the MIH for the last 7-8 months, when we started this journey, we have collect almost 1,800 of partners. They are interested in doing, with our current structure, the working group and also technical committee, that we bring everybody together and creating a module and solution rather than just a component business. So we bring them to the end customer, the brand, and we can offer different configuration. If you are asking for contract manufacturing, we can offering only 100% ready EV for you, and you just put the nomenclature on. Or you do 80%. You can leave the digital copies to yourself. We do everything underneath, and we offer it to you with also the body, all the specification you require. Or the least, but not the last, not the least, is the skateboard. If you only want a skateboard and you want to produce for your national pride, you want to put your body on, you want to do everything, we can also just provide you with the skateboard. So different configuration and bringing the different partner, be able to develop something that is really connect to the user, particularly on the software side, to define the hardware. That is something that MIH is now promoting. With that, I think we get a lot of talents now because it's an open platform. We're becoming an Android of the EV rather than other player. Everybody's closing their loop. They do it themselves and spend mega money on the development cost. Eventually, it'll bring the barrier a lot higher. We're providing a lower barrier entrance. So anybody, including the tech company, they can becoming a manufacturer or the provider of the EV for their brands. So this is a new concept. I think everybody is trying to think whether we have a chance to becoming the Android of the EV. And I do believe this is going to be a vision that we can accomplish.
Very good. Well, let's talk about the exciting world of racing. Racing has always been very important to the automotive industry. There's a saying called "race on Sunday, sell on Monday." Now, for EV in this whole new world, it offers yet a new way to do R&D. Monika, maybe you can talk a little bit about how exactly R&D gets transferred from racing into other vehicles, and why is it particularly important for EV racing or EV right now?
We always like to say from race to road. Racing has always been part of a DNA of QEV. And I would say that we are actually at the moment leader when it comes to electric racing. We are actually involved in all of the electric racing series that exist at the moment. In some of those electric racing series, we are just, acting as a support team for development of new technologies. And in some of those, like ERX Rallycross Championship, we are producing all of the cars and organizing the whole championship. And we consider that racing, especially with electric cars, when you consider, for example, Formula E. In Formula E, you have all of the same bodies, but teams are able to change certain parts of technology for every season. And this really allows to all of the manufacturers that join to develop new technologies that could easily be applied then later on in the cars that go to road. And for us, this was really a platform to develop new technologies that at the end are applied even in the mass market products like buses. Maybe you would say it doesn't make sense. You're developing something that is high performance, but with engineers that are working with crazy deadlines, have to be creative, especially, for example, with us, we were always a team that had like smallest budget. So we had to figure out, we had to be really creative. And this is, I think, where the best ideas are coming from that can really be applied in the mass market products.
And Jack, you were also involved through NIO's Formula E team. You were also involved in racing about the same time that QEV was. So what experiences did you take from that?
I was surprised, Vitaly. I was told by Monika, she was there in Beijing for the first racing. And I was there to just promote our NIO Formula E team. At that time, we called ourselves Next EV. The Next EV team actually hired, Nelson Piquet Jr. as our first championship winner. So we set our goal. Everything we started with the brand, we need to be in the racing, just like Ferrari, right? So you got NIO in the first year. Our goal is to get the championship of the racing. We got that. And then the second year, we go with the supercar, which is the EP9. We have this 1,000 kilowatt, which is about 1,360 horsepower of animal that driving on the racing track, and then gain a lot of attention. So actually, we launched that in 2016 in London, and was a success. And 2017 would be our first EV, and then 2018 we go to the IPO, as you mentioned. So we set the goal very clearly, and it's all about building the brand, including the IPO. You expose yourself and you make sure that everybody's understand where you're coming from, the racing track to the reality of the mobility world. Everything went through the severe environment will becoming more available and also applicable to the real world situation. So I think we still have that passion, and not only about the rock and roll, okay? It's about you have really something you love and you like, and you can turn that into reality.
And I need to point out one thing. At the first season of the Formula E, the Next TV team, the team principal was Adrian Campos, our partner, and actually also our CEO, John O'Roos, was behind running it. So we are really proud that Next TV, later on Neo, won the first season championship with Nelson Piquet.
Yeah. See, when we talk about all this, we all get excited, right? Vitaly. So I think you should talk about this more. And in particular, we have all this celebrity and everybody, the young boys are coming, young girls, everybody dancing. So it's a different world.
Yeah, we'll see if Formula E takes over Formula One at some point in the near future.
Oh yeah.
Well, there has always been a bit of a tug of war between established car companies and the EVs. It was us versus them. Now the tables have turned and the situation has changed. What kind of role can established industry stakeholders play in the transition? And how can they support these companies? What type of investments should they be thinking about and making, the big corporates, and looking to the future now that EV is inevitable? Maybe Jack, you can start on your side.
Okay. I think that there's a lot of movement that we believe that the traditional guys are also doing. They're embracing the new company. They even acquired the new company. Some new company guys also moving forwards with cooperation with the mainstream OEM. So the investment coming into it is really huge right now. I believe that also the technology giant, you name it, in California where you stay right now, Vitaly, everybody is moving toward making sure that they are part of this autonomous drive world or even mobility world. And it's all about also how do you get the chips available, as you mentioned just before, the supply chain issue of the chips. Really, how do you make your brand is available to drive this future mobility? And I believe that the investment will be threefold. One is in the software, second in the electrical architecture, and then the last but not the least is the chips. So these investment will come in big time and then bring everybody together, rather than OEM competing with the new startup and then trying to kill each other. It's a bigger pie now we're creating. I think everybody can be part of it, and then the three area that I mentioned, it would be a worthwhile investment.
Very good.
Monika, I completely agree with you, and I think we will see more and more mergers happening with big players and new startups coming on the scene. It will be even, I think, mergers between OEMs and some tech companies that are not strictly related to the automotive segment, since a lot of all of the new vehicles are going to be connected, and we will experience this connectivity user experience that will become really important. Cars are not going to be just cars. They are going to be also like our phones right now. So due to that, I think that more and more mergers are going to happen between small startup companies and big OEMs.
Very good. I wanted to remind our audience to post your questions. We're going to get to the Q&A part very soon, as we're wrapping up our prepared remarks here. So please do post, and we'll be coming to that section shortly. Now, here's a fun question. Who do you think will be the biggest car makers, let's say, in 10 years? Do you think it's going to be the established brands that we know, or some of the recent or startups, or even companies that we've never heard of before that haven't been founded yet? What do you think, Jack?
Well, 20 years ago, you never heard about Tesla, right? And now they are the biggest in valuation, even though the volume is not big enough. So who knows, another 10 or 20 years, who's going to be the biggest one? But I wouldn't say one that without anything that being merged, or as what Monika said, people are trying to be joint venture together. I have that experience in the automotive for 40 years. It's been always changing, but there are names that are never fading away. So I think that if you want to do a new animals, like, you know, what we had just seen is like the big company be supported by different continents, Europe, US, China. Each continent would probably have one or two and becoming the leading sheep. And then there's a lot of new startup also gonna, this is a new world. Everybody is gonna create new stuff. It would be very exciting.
Absolutely. Monika, your thoughts?
I really believe that we are going to experience probably, you know, some of the startups taking the lead, but also big OEMs. You have smart management over there. They're going to adapt, and they are already adapting. It is also a change that is going to happen not with electric cars itself, but with autonomy that we are experiencing, with the mobility and the way how we use the cars. So I really consider that maybe you're going to have some of the old OEMs not adapting properly and not surviving, but I think most of them will survive, and in a way with a merger or joint venture with somebody, they're going to succeed and reshape their business models. And also this was a really good opportunity because you would not have startups in the automotive industry if there was no start in the electric vehicles, because electric vehicles allowed everybody to start from the ground zero. And that's why all of the newcomers in the automotive industry were possible at this moment in the history.
Very good. Now, speaking of autonomy, it seems to be finally somewhere over the horizon. And how do you think car ownership and transportation will change in general? And how long do you think the transition will take to true autonomy?
It's hard to say, Vitaly, but people are saying 5 years, people are saying 3 years, 7 years, but it's gonna come within this decade. I believe that because of this new mobility world, people will try to leverage the share riding, and also to be able to use that as a convenience for their day-to-day work. But in the ownership of the car, people are also seeing in the weekend, they want to go out, they want to have their own mobility transportation rather than riding on an Uber or Didi. So there's a lot of things that I think the ADAS would do to the new mobility world. But if you ask me the specific years, I don't have that number. But if you ask me whether it's gonna coming, definitely it's coming. Just like 5-6 years ago, I know EV is coming, and people say, "Are you crazy? This is not gonna work?" But hey, it's here, so it's gonna happen. So we're gonna make it happen.
I think
Monika,
autonomy will happen gradually. Probably it will first happen that, you know, you have closed cities, city centers, and then, you know, you have only autonomous cars driving over there. I believe that to really experience this full autonomy and seeing it happening in many different areas of the world, we will need at least 10 years. I'm not really optimistic that it can happen in a shorter time. But those are just predictions. And I really believe that polarization is going to happen. With the young generation, you see that a lot of people don't want to even get the driving license. It's not fun for them. Of course, you're always going to have people that love driving, that enjoy it. And even with the young generations, you have people that are passionate about racing and passionate about cars. So I believe that people will want to have cars. Probably, you know, more or less the cars that you want to drive are going to be some kind of sports cars or some kind of cars that you really enjoy, some historic cars. So they're always going to be fans of driving. And for the most of the people, autonomous is going to be solution. I look at from my perspective, I like driving, but I don't like to stand in you know, a crowd and, you know, you're driving like 2 kilometers per hour and then stopping on the stoplight. So for that, I prefer to be in an autonomous car and read a book, answer my emails. But for Sunday and driving, I don't know, around the hills in Croatia or on Croatian seaside, I would prefer to do it in my own car.
That's why I say on Saturday, you're going to still own the car. And then on the weekday, Monday through Friday, you will enjoy the Didi or Uber.
Much like horses, cars will become something just for leisure. Manual cars, or I guess we'll call them non-autonomous cars.
Yeah, horses is autonomous if you train them right?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I want to do a quick lightning round. I have a few quick topics that I would love your responses to. Very short, you know, how long you think it's going to take and how important you think it is. So we'll start. So maybe go Jack, Monika. So starting with Jack, solid state batteries.
All right, you hit the right stuff. Now it's coming in the next 2-3 years.
And how important is it?
Oh, it's so important. You gotta hit one charge. If you're gonna go 800 kilometers of mileage, you gotta have solid state.
Monika, your thoughts?
So definitely solid, but I'm also not sure, you know, will maybe graphene be a next big thing? So I think that we are going to experience, not maybe in the nearest future, but in the next 10 years, we are going to experience some more improvements in the battery segment. And beside the solid state, maybe it will be graphene or maybe something else.
Okay. Fast charging.
Fast charging is good to have, but most of the people now, if they can get a cup of coffee and then get it all down, fantastic. If not, put it at home. You don't drive over 100 kilometers. 80% of people don't drive over 100 kilometers per day. So, well, nice to have.
I think with fast charging, we are almost already there. For, you know, what we need, the fast charging to drink a coffee and charge your car, it's here. So great opportunity, but as Jack said, you can charge your car at home.
Okay, and is battery swap even a relevant idea anymore?
Jack? You're talking about my baby, Vitaly.
I know.
Battery swap, we learned from the Better Place story before. Battery swap help you know, sell more car is a unique selling point, and then also it's people buying it is not just because of convenience of within 3 minutes you can swap the battery. It's wow, it's so cool. And people go there and then experience that merchandising model, and also you also can sell the electricity back to the swapper. So you actually, if you are 80% charger, when you drive over there, you can sell the 50% of your capacity to you know, the swap station and gain the credit points. So this is cool. And I think that's something that you can help selling more car.
Monika?
I think it is a cool point from the marketing perspective, but I'm not sure with the improvement in the battery cells, will it be so attractive in the future?
I think GoGoRo is the only one that's done it at scale, really, up to this point.
Yeah.
Now, hydrogen.
it's hard to build a hydrogen station. It's a huge investment. You need government huge support. And compared to the BEV, if hydrogen operating cost is competitive, that's going to come in as a parallel competitor to the pure electrical. But at the moment, I didn't see it's flying yet.
Monika?
In my opinion, hydrogen is future for big trucks, heavy duty machines. And for those kind of applications, we are at the moment developing hydrogen platforms. And it will be much easier because you don't have to provide, charging infrastructure on many different places. So since it's really for a specific niche, I think it's going to work.
Yep.
Very good. Now, related to that, maybe air taxis, the electric VTOLs.
Wow, you're gonna fly, right? So it's good to have a taxi, but there's more space up there, so you can try to allocate the mobility world. But depends on regulation, whether we are open sky.
Monika?
In my opinion, there is a long way to go there. A lot of different regulation changes, also a lot of improvements on the technology side, especially in the battery segment. So this is not something that is so close.
True autonomy, when and how important?
Started from your garage parking, and if you think that's a true autonomy, I think you can get it done pretty quickly in 2-3 years. If you have all the big data of the garage space of the world, you manage, you go there and you drop your car at the entrance and you park itself. But if you are going to talk about true autonomy globally, everywhere in the world, huge complexity. You see, as I said, maybe within the decade, we can see some light in the tunnel. It's going to take a lot of complexity and challenges.
Absolutely. Monika?
I agree completely. 10 years at least to see it on larger scale. And importance, I think probably the most important, because it's going to reshape the whole industry completely.
So you're saying I'm still going to have to give my daughter keys to a car to drive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, very good. So I have one last question from myself. When we come back together in 5 years for our reunion talk of this one, Jack, what will be your job?
Oh, I'll be enjoying every moment that I'm still doing this so-called mobility drive. Every 5 years, you see I'm doing something new. And I want to enjoy every moment that I have with the new generation. I think there's a lot of things that we can explore and help inspiring the next. So another mobility job, but it's going to be the same thing, helping the next generation.
Very nice. Monika?
So my goal is to really make a difference and change life of many people. Like, for example, what we are doing right now in Philippines. I learned quite early, if you want to grow, you need to not only learn, but really change yourself. And I'm ready to change myself. So maybe at this moment, I cannot tell you exactly the role that I'm going to hold in 5 years, but I'm definitely going to pursue my goals.
Very nice. So with that, I'm going to switch over to questions from our audience, and I will start one to Jack. We saw that Foxconn recently announced a mobility fund with one of the major financing holding companies. Is it a plan for Foxconn to invest in the mobility space?
Well, I think that is a great question. That the MIH Consortium is actually forming the working group, and we are trying to build a solution for the EVs world. With this working group, I think they will be creating some unicorn for sure. And we would ask also this fund to invest on those unicorn to get them grow. So it's like an incubation, and make sure that we have the new startup available, diamond in the rough, we pick it up and then we grow them.
And can you talk about the business model? There's another question of MIH. Is it nonprofit, for-profit, and what's Foxconn's role going forward in it?
Well, the consortium is a nonprofit. We were trying to organize this working group and also technical committee and make sure that people gather their best talent, developers, and doing something with the new IP. And that IP will be then the share. We're asking our founding member at Foxconn or whoever the new OEM, they are interested in coming into it as an go-to-market capacity. So with that, I think our new technology, when we develop as a solution, we will provide it to the Foxconn of the world or the new founding member of the world, and make sure they have the marketplace they can play with.
Very good. Now, Monika, question for you. Can you share a bit of advice for startups trying to secure partnerships and funding from big corporations? It was very impressive what you built with Porsche, Camel, and such. How did you do it? I'm sure it's a fast answer.
There is no easy answer on that one. I remember when we started, and the first show that we had was Frankfurt Motor Show, and we presented this fastest electric supercar from Croatia. And we had engineers coming from Audi, you know, and they were really calculating, is this really possible? What those guys are saying, 1,000 and something horsepower supercar, electric supercar from Croatia. It was really hard. When you're starting to approach those big guys, it's extremely hard. Also, the barriers to enter the automotive industries are high. You need a lot of financing, and you need the people that are going to trust that the product that you're making is something really a breakthrough. So in my opinion, the most important is to create a product that you can show, because with the product it's much easier. So finding like small financing to create a showcase and to really have something to present. And then a lot of networking, a lot of knocking on the doors to really be able to even pitch your idea and present what you're doing to big guys.
Now, Jason asks, maybe Jack, back to you. When can we expect a real breakthrough in battery tech?
Well, there's always a breakthrough every year, as you say, that there's a energy density increase, and trying to hit the road, you know, with the new technology. And I think that as we talk about the solid state and all the graphite technology, there's, I think every 2-3 years, there's a upgrade. So that's a generic answer to that, but specifically what year, what day, what kind of technology, I don't have that right now.
Got it. Monika, any thoughts on that?
Somebody who comes with a breakthrough, it's going to be an ex-Bill Gates. So this is going to be something revolutionary. And honestly, I'm following, as Jack said, every year you have something new, some new companies coming out, but nothing was at the point to really be on a mass market level and to really be able to produce in larger volumes.
Okay, Monika, you mentioned this before. This question comes from Robert Brown. Norway is often used as an example of successful mode of electrification, but the US is not Norway. For countries which have a fragmented political views, different views on electrification and climate change, and enormous connections to the fossil fuel industry, what can EV companies do to leapfrog the slow pace of change and drive organic motivation in the market to switch to electrification?
I think they need to have more people trying the car. I know that from the fact that, for example, when we started in Rimac with electric hypercar, it was really tough. It was tough to sell the car because a lot of people were, am I going to buy a supercar that doesn't have sound? And when they sit in the car, when they experience a torque vectoring, when they experience acceleration, they are so overwhelmed with different inputs from the car than they are used to, that they really forget about this, like, okay, I'm missing the sound. They don't miss the sound. They like the experience. It's something new. It's something exciting. And I think that's really important for all of the players that are producing electric vehicles. More and more people needs to try them, because when they try electric cars, they love it. All of the electric cars that have this acceleration that is much better than any gas-powered car that you have. So this is the key if we are not taking account of the government policies.
Well, the best way to do the test drive is to do the sales of EV is do the test drive. Every 3 test drive, you get 1 customer.
That's amazing. That's much better than typical. Now, Jack, for you, a question from Daniel. He's formerly from GoGoRo. I think he asked a question that has some insight. How do you ensure good integration between the MIH skateboard platform and customer vehicles?
Okay, the skateboard itself is easier, simpler, and is very clean. And by the way, it's open. So we have no black box. We open up to the developers, and then the developer to put everything on it. And also the cooperation will be becoming so transparent. So you don't block with all this development costs hiding in behind. Everybody can try their best and then get the best cost structure and also the qualities elements of it. So I think that's a very, very open question, and also is an open answer.
Got it. Monika, one for you. You are an international advisor for EV Dynamics. Can you share a bit more about your experience working with Asian corporates? Any particular big plans coming up in Asia?
Definitely, EV Dynamics is planning to completely internationalize their business. Before, companies was mostly focused on selling buses in Chinese market, and now the goal is to really spread around the world. Also, there is a cooperation with QEV Technologies, and EV Dynamics is actually our manufacturing partner for all of the platforms that we are producing around the world. I consider that companies from Asia that are internationalizing their business model and changing a bit are going to have a huge impact in the future.
James is asking, James from Penn Engineering is asking how companies, I'll try to generalize the question, how companies can get to be part of the MIH supply chain ecosystem?
Well, join the MIH member. And then when you register, we will start to evaluate and see whether you can be qualified in the working group. And also, if you are a contribution member, that means you will be actively participating in all the technical discussion. We'll make it part of the family. And then we want to also make sure we can create a solution for the end customer.
And a question from Jesse, maybe for both of you, with all the global pressures and the political changes, do you think that EV supply chains are going to get more localized and kind of reverse from the global supply chain that we've seen in the past couple of decades?
Monika, you want to go first?
I think that's would be really hard to localize, especially when it comes to, for example, battery cell production. Do you really think that, you know, battery cells are going to be produced locally in different countries? I don't see that happening. So in general, I would say, at least for the key components, we would not experience localization of the product.
Well, I would think a hub and spoke kind of approach will be happening. With the hub, that you got the R&D, the development, and also the key component will be centralized. And then with the arm to the hub, that every spoke, if you are creating in US or in China or in Europe for those things, and you put it assembled together and proximity to your customer. So I think still there are ways of restructuring the supply chain, particularly when the battery and also for the motor and so on and so on. Definitely chips is another thing. You won't be able to provide the chips manufacturing everywhere in the world. You need a central hub to do the chips, and then you supply to the different locations.
Now, somewhat related to that, there is some consolidation in the IC market over the last few years. Do you have fear that somebody manages to corner the automotive IC market and there'll be more problems like we experienced today with chips?
Well, today's problem is more with the mainstream chips rather than the high tech, the 5 nano or 7 nano. There are evolution to the new world of mobility, and I think there will be capacity built for the world in the next 2-3 years, and then we'll make sure that we're ready for, because we have more visibility now for the future world. Now we can really build the capacity around the world and make sure that we don't have the same issue as of today.
Monika, any thoughts on that?
Agree completely.
Now, there are other opportunities besides hardware. This is a question from Venkat. I'm going to try to paraphrase it and generalize it for you. What are the other opportunities besides building hardware? Are there opportunities in building software components, new sensors, new lighting, different components that can be an interesting business in being a supplier in the new world of EVs?
Definitely. This is the new technology is going to be all becoming how to work together. Just like after pandemic, people know if country and country, they don't work together, you don't have a chance to fight with those viruses. So if you're working together, like the lighting and sensor component supplier, becoming a partner, and then you can really provide a smart corner rather than just lighting or sensor, as is the light with the sensor in the corner, and then we call it smart corner, and make sure we have the total solution, a 360-degree visibility of the vehicle, and then make sure the technology are taking care of visual and also our touch and feel. So these are the things that I think there a lot of working together to be done.
And I would point out that software is definitely the key when it comes to electric vehicles, maybe even more important than the hardware itself.
Very good. Now, Jack, probably to you, Jules asks, EV and smart mobility in Taiwan, how far off are we? Who is going to be leading this? And what is it going to look like? What will be the benefits?
Leading what? Leading the industry?
Leading the industry of smart mobility in Taiwan.
Oh, okay. I think that I can't say anybody, but I think we are moving in a fast way that we want the speed to happening. So as we told you that we established MIH just for the last 7-8 months, and it's becoming huge. We want not only for Taiwan, we want to do it for the world. So started from Taiwan, embrace the world, and make sure that we have the continents are all buying into it, an open platform, forming a new Android of the EV, and make sure everybody is jumping into it and develop it for. We want to get the world's talents to do that. Everybody can do that, and particularly with the software, work from home, we can get all the talent working on those things for the EV world. Now,
Joanne asks, do you think that the acceptance of EVs is already there from consumers? Is there anything else that the car companies can do to create more motivation, considering that they're still more expensive than internal combustion cars?
Monika, you want to do that?
I think we already answered partially. So what companies can do are test rides, a lot of them. And I consider that more and more people really want electric cars. Now it's just a question how many can afford at this point those electric cars.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
it's affordability.
Yep.
I think Elon Musk said once when he was talking about demand for Model 3 that just people physically don't have the money in their wallets to, they want the cars, but they couldn't afford them. Now, automotive companies like Tesla, like NIO, have been leading the charge on charging. And do you think we're getting to a point, this is a question from Peter from YPro, are we getting to a point where the market conditions are right for energy companies to take the lead in building the infrastructure now?
Well, I think we're in the early stage of engaging the grid, the power grids, and we started to have the concept of doing the solar city for different countries. So the industry leaders, particular with the charging and also the national grids corporation, we will be able to do an energy storage company or energy storage system for a different country and make sure we leverage the best green energy and with the big data, make it a splash. That's also very good for the next generation because we will see a lot of carbon index being identified and then make sure that everybody contribute to it.
And I would like to point out that companies that are, producing electricity, they are sometimes the one to push for electric mobility. So we have a case in Peru where company that is main supplier for the electricity was actually the one to first push for 2 electric buses being produced with our platforms in the local bus company, because they see that they need to build the charging infrastructure in the future, and they need to make also this push to electric vehicles.
Yeah, very good. Now, here's a couple of fun questions as we're nearing the end here. Do you think that Tesla will be the EV company with the highest market cap 5 years from now? If not, who and what type of company will it be? Jack?
You are saying that it's a fun question. I think it's a serious question that everybody want to be on the top, but now who knows? Tesla is on the top of valuation. In 5 years' time, it could be even higher because if their volume hit 10 million, guess how huge it's going to be. But nobody's going to be taking the whole pie. We are actually competing each other, and we are creating more visibility of the world that can do the EV. I believe that there will be 2-3 new conglomerate more to come and competing with Tesla.
If I knew the answer, I would probably be trading stocks, not working in the automotive industry.
It's my job.
But I agree with you. I agree with you, Jack. I think there will be more companies on the top, not only Tesla.
Yeah.
Now, last question, and it's a great way, I think, to wrap up to both of you. If you were to have a follow-up call after this, what would be a great starting point to have some actionable collaboration next? Jack?
Well, if we have a follow-up call, we want you to join the MIH and then be part of the family. Let's do something together and make it happen. That's it.
I agree completely. So I think that we can be a client for MIH because we are constantly looking for platforms for our clients who want to develop, for example, electric SUVs, but there is too high investment to develop platform on their own. And on another side, maybe we could potentially collaborate with electric bus platforms that we are developing. And for the future, MIH could supply even bus platforms, not only platforms for cars.
You got it.
Excellent. I think there's at least one deal that's going to come from this event. Well, I want to thank you both very, very much. Jack, for your early morning in Taiwan, Monika, for your late night in Croatia. I was supposed to be in Ukraine this week already, so it would have been in the same time zone, but luckily I'm in LA. So thank you very much for both of your time and insights and your energy. And Elisa, back to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Vitaly and Jack and Monika. It's really a great pleasure and honor, as I mentioned earlier. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank everyone in the Zoom with us from the very beginning as well. I know that we have a lot of industry experts from all over the world, and judging from the questions that were asked during the Q&A session, this is really, I'm gonna watch the replay already. I know that there are probably a lot more insights that I can get from this. And I wish we had more time to talk about racing and rock and roll and a lot of these exciting trends. I'm sure, hopefully, there will be more conversations to come for that. But I guess this is, basically toward the end of our session. However, remember that, this is a series, and basically every month we're going to bring something new to you. And remember, I mentioned in the beginning that a lot of Asian players might be important partners for you for your further expansion. Next month, we're going to explore the traditional sector. Do you know what they're doing to innovate? So, for example, in the bike manufacturing sector, in the textile sector, in agriculture, and so on and so forth. Now, a lot of them are looking for partners externally to innovate and to add technology. You might be the partners that they're looking for. You might even be the investment target that they're looking for. But obviously, you will need to know where to look for such opportunities. Scan the QR code if you want to RSVP for our next session, or check out our social media channels for further information. And with that, again, I want to bring Jack, Monika, and Vitaly all on stage. Thank you so much, really, for working together on this cross-border basis with us throughout the last couple of months. I really appreciate your time and effort, and also hope that this is really just the beginning of a lot more collaborations to come. And with that, I'm going to end the session. Greetings from Taipei one last time. We hope to see you again very, very soon. Have a nice one. Bye-bye.